The National Desk, America's News Now.
Feeling the heat. The heat dome hits more than half of all Americans.
Even those who deny that we're in the midst of a climate crisis can't deny the impact of extreme heat is having on Americans.
The Department of Justice takes aim at excessive force in Memphis, the disturbing pattern leading to the dramatic step.
We are not concluding that these allegations are of excessive force, improper searches and stops, and racial disparities are sufficient to show a legal violation without further analysis, but they do warrant a full investigation.
One day after interest rate hikes, predictions of an economic soft landing increase. But can the economy pull it off? This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Scott Thuman. Donald Trump's lawyers met with members of special counsel Jack Smith's team today for several hours as the grand jury investigating the misconduct in the 2020 election also convened today and may still be meeting. NBC reporting that the lawyers were advised to expect a new indictment, but the former president took to his Truth Social account to paint a different picture, writing, "My attorneys had a productive meeting with the DOJ this morning, explaining in detail that I did nothing wrong, was advised by many lawyers, and that an indictment of me would only further destroy our country. No indication of notice was given during the meeting. Do not trust the fake news on anything." Court officials, meanwhile, confirmed that there was no grand jury decision expected today. Meanwhile, reports of barricades being erected outside the Fulton County Courthouse in Georgia this afternoon are raising some speculation that District Attorney Fannie Willis may be closer to a decision whether or not to indict Trump for his role in the potential election interference of 2020. So far, no word on any charges coming out of Georgia as of yet. We will let you know as soon as we know. The record-breaking heat wave continues with more than half of the country under heat alerts today, affecting around 180 million people. The heat this week is at its peak today and tomorrow in the eastern half of the country, with several cities approaching 100 degrees. In the Midwest, St. Louis and Kansas City were forecast to reach over 100 degrees tomorrow. Temperatures in the Southwest are slowly going down. Phoenix's nighttime low fell below 90 degrees for the first time in 16 days. Two climate organizations reported today that they are virtually certain this month will be the Earth's hottest on record. Many scientists say it will be in the hottest in the 120,000 years, based on data from tree rings, coral reefs, and deep sea sediment cores. This comes after last month was the hottest June ever recorded.
I don't know anybody who honestly believes climate change is not a serious problem.
President Biden announced new actions to protect the country from extreme heat. The Department of Labor will set up enforcement of heat safety violations and inspections in high-risk workplaces. It'll also send out a hazard alert to employers. Up to $7 million will go toward improving weather forecasts, and $152 million will be used to increase water storage and climate resilience in some states. The Dow Jones almost did something today it had not done in 126 years, 14 consecutive session days with a gain. But around 1 p.m. this afternoon, stocks took a dive. The Dow closed down 237 points for the day. The last time the Dow had an upswing of 13 days in a row was in May of 1987. So far this year, the Dow is up about 7% since January. But what is still on the rise is gas prices. According to AAA, the average cost for a gallon of gas on Thursday, $3.71. That's up 2 cents from Wednesday and 13 cents compared to last Thursday. A month ago, gas was 15 cents cheaper, but on this day a year ago, a gallon of gas cost $4.30. Still, the job market remains strong, which isn't exactly what the Fed wants. The Labor Department reported today weekly unemployment claims dropped to its fewest it has since February. Unemployment is currently at 3.6%. Federal Reserve officials have said the unemployment rate needs to rise past 4% to bring down inflation. Despite all of that, the Federal Reserve is no longer forecasting a recession, and economic growth data out on Thursday shows better than expected growth in the second quarter. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has a closer look at that and the risk that still remains.
The odds of the United States avoiding a recession have never looked this good. Despite a historic cycle of policy tightening by the Federal Reserve, including 11 interest rate hikes, American workers and consumers are holding their own.
The staff now has a noticeable slowdown in growth starting later this year in the forecast, but given the resilience of the economy recently, they are no longer forecasting a recession.
An outcome Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says is still a long way from assured. The first reading of gross domestic product from the Commerce Department Thursday shows the economy grew at an annualized rate of 2.4%.
We're just in this incredibly unique period post-COVID.
A resilient job market, government investment in infrastructure, and what economists call revenge spending.
Spending by consumers sort of to get back at the pandemic, taking that away from us.
That trend exemplified in record attendance for the Barbie movie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Ken. And the Taylor Swift Eras Tour, which the Fed has specifically credited for fueling tourist spending. But stronger than expected economic activity means the Fed isn't out of the woods yet with future price spikes.
At the margin, stronger growth could lead over time to higher inflation.
Other, more unpredictable factors could also send costs higher. Russia destabilizing global food supply by pulling out of a shipping agreement with Ukraine, and extreme heat affecting oil refineries and contributing to what AAA's recorded as a 13-cent spike in gas prices just in the last week. Despite a rosier outlook, Powell making clear the economy still has to contend with what could be more interest rate hikes and the volatility that comes with them. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
The U.S. Justice Department is investigating the city of Memphis and its police department to determine if they have systemically violated constitutional rights of African Americans in their community or federal law.
Our review indicates that even in a majority black city, MPD's traffic enforcement may focus disproportionately on the black community.
This investigation stems from Memphis Police Department's handling of the Tyree Nichols case that led to his death, but is separate from the federal criminal investigation of that case. This is the 9th pattern or practice investigation into law enforcement misconduct opened by the DOJ during this administration. Bud Light's parent company, Anheuser-Busch, is planning to lay off about 350 employees. Many will be corporate jobs, and they won't impact frontline staff like drivers and warehouse workers. Anheuser-Busch said the layoffs are intended to simplify and reduce layers in the organization. The company has around 18,000 employees in the U.S. A new postpartum depression medication can significantly improve symptoms, according to a study in the American Journal of Psychiatry. Almost 200 mothers with the condition took either zuranolone or a placebo. Those taking the drug had significantly greater improvements. An FDA approval decision is expected by August 5th. Democrats defended gender transitioning therapies for children today during an explosive House Judiciary Committee hearing. Congressman Jerry Nadler called such treatments safe, life-saving, and mainstream. A 19-year-old detransitioner, though, testified that she was lied to and that her childhood was ruined. Michigan this week became the 22nd state to outlaw conversion therapy. Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed 2 bills, one prohibiting state-licensed medical providers from performing the practice on minors, and another creating penalties for violators. Both bills passed 21-15 in the state Senate last month, but did not garner enough GOP support to take immediate effect. Instead, that ban will go into effect 90 days after the legislature adjourns in December. Whitmer previously signed an executive directive forbidding the use of federal and state funds for conversion therapy. A pair of new studies by the CDC released today show that suspected cases of alpha-gal syndrome have increased substantially in the last 13 years. Alpha-gal syndrome is a potentially lethal allergic reaction to red meat and cow's milk dairy products caused by tick bites, specifically Lone Star ticks. The CDC now estimates up to 450,000 people in the U.S. since the year 2010 could have alpha-gal syndrome with the highest concentration located in the central Midwest area toward the East Coast. Signs to look for after eating meat include body hives, stomach pains and vomiting, swelling to the lips, throat, tongue or eyelids, and shortness of breath or difficulty breathing. Demand for new passports and passport renewals is the highest it's ever been, and it's continuing a major backlog at the State Department. Standard processing times now vary from 10 to 13 weeks. Expedited processing takes 7 to 9 weeks. The State Department has increased staffing levels and approved tens of thousands of hours in overtime for processing. Many people are calling their lawmakers for help getting their passports so they can travel abroad.
We do everything we can to expedite those, and that's a constituent service that we provide, and we're happy to. So we encourage people to reach out to our office if they're having those issues. But again, it shouldn't come to that.
The post-pandemic spike in passport demand from Americans, it truly is unprecedented, and we will be on track to issue more passports this year than in any previous year.
Republican lawmakers are introducing a bill called the Passport Act to address delays. It calls for expanded in-person appointments, a reserve workforce during high demand, and an investigation into wait times and technology failures. The House Judiciary Committee is calling off a vote to hold Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg in contempt of Congress. The Republican chair of the committee, Congressman Jim Jordan, says Facebook is now fully cooperating with the investigation, but contempt is still on the table if the company fails to cooperate in full. The committee accuses Zuckerberg and Meta of willfully refusing to turn over internal documents for an investigation into whether Facebook and Instagram intentionally censored conservative posts. Meta maintains it complied, turning over more than 53,000 documents. Coming up, why a UPS workers' strike is a possibility again after a historic agreement, and what comes next. Then, a new development after environmentalists paused construction of a major natural gas pipeline, what the Supreme Court ordered today. And later, we investigate historic recruitment and retention challenges plaguing the U.S. military. We'll be right back. The historic Teamsters UPS deal is not set in stone just yet. Some part-time UPS workers are expressing displeasure online with the framework of the tentative agreement and are pressing for a no vote, which could lead to a strike after all. Union leaders meet this weekend to review the deal, and then all union members have a chance to vote electronically between August 3rd and August 22nd. For their part, the Teamsters have been urging the union to ratify that deal. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's health scare is raising questions about how old is too old when it comes to serving in Congress. Although his aides say the leader was just feeling lightheaded. National correspondent Janae Bowens has the details on a renewed term limit push.
And a string of This shocking moment is raising questions about Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's ability to govern. During a press conference on Wednesday, McConnell froze for about 30 seconds.
Okay, Mitch.
The 81-year-old polio survivor also suffered a concussion and multiple falls this year. He's brushing off concerns.
I'm fine. That's
dehydrated.
And on Thursday, 90-year-old Senator Dianne Feinstein appeared confused and started to give a speech during a committee vote.
Priorities submitted.
Yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just aye.
Age an issue in the current presidential campaign as well, with questions about 80-year-old Joe Biden's health and mental fitness. While the president is already limited to 2 terms, there's a push in Washington to extend that to members of Congress as well.
Folks tend to become very insulated from the voters that they're supposed to represent. And really, D.C. is an alternate reality.
Senator Ted Cruz has been pushing for term limits for years. He's proposing a constitutional amendment that would limit 3 2-year terms for members of the House and 2 6-year terms for the Senate.
Our capital has too often become a political playground for the powerful and the well-connected.
A poll from the University of Maryland shows 83% of Americans favor a constitutional amendment on term limits for members of Congress.
If you listen to Charles Grassley, he's up on everything. He's 89 years old, but he is quite competent. But the question is, as the incumbency increases, what kinds of unfair advantages inhere in the system that the public is not going to use as a basis for their voting?
Opponents say the restrictions get rid of people with great experience and knowledge, and with voters deciding who is in power, term limits already exist. On Capitol Hill, I'm Janae Bowens for the National Desk.
The Biden administration announced new steps to protect renters today. Some of them include ensuring U.S. renters can address tenant screening errors and provide more time for people to avoid eviction. Private companies are also involved. Zillow, for example, will provide more options to search for affordable rental units. A bipartisan bill introduced today aims to strengthen the drug supply chain. That comes after a report found almost 300 medications are in short supply in the U.S. It includes requirements that would increase drug manufacturing in the U.S. It also aims to reduce dependence on countries like China and India. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court stepped in and ordered that the Mountain Valley natural gas pipeline can resume construction. The Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals was set to hear arguments this morning in a case levied by environmental groups that paused the pipeline for the last 2 years. Congress ordered the project's approval as part of the bipartisan bill to increase the debt ceiling. President Joe Biden signed that bill into law back in June. The pipeline is built in Virginia and West Virginia to meet growing energy demands in the South and Mid-Atlantic. President Biden has ordered the U.S. government to give the International Criminal Court evidence of Russian war crimes. U.S. intelligence agencies have reportedly gathered evidence that Russian leaders have intentionally hit civilian infrastructure in Ukraine and forcibly deported thousands of Ukrainian children from occupied territory. This comes after the Pentagon has resisted the move for months. We are taking the pulse of America, our team of nearly 4,000 local journalists bringing you the headlines from across the country. We start with smash and grabs at Seattle's flagship Nordstrom store.
We've seen it on repeat. Vehicles used for smash and grabs. Often it's a small business. This time it was Nordstrom, the flagship downtown Seattle store.
They proceeded to try to break it, and then they pulled out a gun and were shooting the window.
He's too afraid to show his face, but watched a sedan ram into the Chanel boutique at Nordstrom and get nowhere. Then watched as they shot up the storefront window.
And Nordstrom's is such a centerpiece downtown.
Bridger Mack is a Nordstrom customer, works across the street.
A car is a bit extreme, as is a gun.
Oh my, wow. That is definitely frightening.
Sarah lives nearby and shops here regularly and has this advice.
You know, you want to be on your guard.
From October 2022 until spring 2023, this warehouse at 850 I Street in Reedley was operating a biological lab. It was a well-kept secret. After seeing signs of activity there, the city of Reedley asked Fresno County Department of Public Health to investigate.
just a significant amount of over like 36 refrigerator freezers located on site. And there was a lot of biological agents on there. So there was a lot of contents of blood, serum, everything that a biological lab would normally have.
County Public Health destroyed all the biologicals in the warehouse. That project was finished July 7th. Prada has never seen anything like this in his 27-year career.
Here at the Public Health Department, we operate our own lab, so we're very well versed in the legal requirements and how to maintain and control an infectious agent. And there was just a complete absence of those controls in place at the warehouse.
A lifeguard needing CPR behind me here at Coney Island after trying to rescue another person is just the latest reminder of how critical the rescue breathing is to someone's chance of survival. Now, I talked with the Anderson Township Fire Department about why it's so important that people learn CPR and what to do if they come across a medical emergency and they haven't been trained.
Every minute that passes, their chance of survival decreases by 10%. So when you look at travel time, when you look at the responses that are required to get to the patient, time is critical.
After the break, we investigate historic recruitment and retention challenges plaguing the U.S. military. We'll be right back. Global tensions are on the rise. China, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, and North Korea pose new worries for U.S. decision makers. At the same time, the Pentagon is experiencing its worst staffing situation in the 50-year history of an all-volunteer military. Mark Hyman spoke with some of those who are struggling to enlist today's young men and women in tonight's Inside Your World Investigates.
As we compete with the lowest unemployment rate in a generation, the Air Force will likely fall short of enlisted active duty recruiting goals.
In Senate testimony earlier this year, Air Force Undersecretary Kristen Jones echoed the warnings of the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps. Last year, the Army missed its recruiting goal by 15,000. The Navy and Air Force were each short more than 2,000. The Marine Corps just barely made its goal.
We are in a war for talent.
Brigadier General John Cushing acknowledges recruiting has become very challenging. He is the Deputy Commanding General of Army Recruiting Command. But he is impressed with the men and women who are joining up.
If you look at this generation, I think that they're smarter, they're more technologically advanced than our generation. And so that, and truth be told, that's exactly what we want in our services.
Still, the services are struggling for enlistees. There may be several factors why military recruiting is coming up short. Poor health and fitness, lack of education, prior drug use, and criminal records disqualify 3 of 4 young adults aged 17 to 24 unless they get a waiver, the services told Congress. In recent years, some enlistment standards have been loosened. The Navy will accept first-time enlistees up to their 42nd birthday. COVID lockdown policies hampered recruiting the last few years.
We were unable to spend time in high schools to talk to influencers, to talk to educators.
Officials have also noticed the pool of likely recruits is getting smaller.
80% of those that we enlist are from military backgrounds, have military families, and that's alarming to me.
Adding to military woes is a loss of prestige. In a 2017 survey, 70% of respondents said they had a great deal of trust and confidence in the military. That fell to 45% last year. Burdensome school loans have been making headlines, but the opportunity to earn a debt-free college education while getting paid is not attracting enough enlistees. Why are young adults not buying this?
I think that we have failed in our duties and responsibilities of informing the generation of those types of opportunities.
Usually, the biggest influencers when counseling a young adult to join up are parents, especially if either one is a veteran. According to a survey of military families, a majority would recommend military life, but that percentage is trending downward. The percentage who would not recommend military service spiked by nearly half. This is troubling for the Pentagon. Yet Cushing is optimistic that when given the opportunity, his recruiters can make a strong case the Army should be a first and not a last choice of employment. His pitch is simple.
What are your dreams and aspirations, and what do you want to do in life? And let me tell you how the Army can get there.
For Inside Your World Investigates, I'm Mark Hyman in Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Coming up, an update on LeBron James' son, Bronny, 3 days after he went into cardiac arrest during basketball practice. Bronny James is back home resting 3 days after he went into cardiac arrest during basketball practice. The 18-year-old son of NBA legend LeBron James was discharged from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles today. James' cardiologist says he was successfully treated. And earlier today, LeBron James posted on social media that his family is, quote, safe and healthy. He thanks supporters for sending love and prayers. That's all for now. Join me again tonight for the evening edition of the National Desk.